Well, thank you for joining us. We are doing something brand new right now. This is a new segment we are introducing to the Becoming a Man podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate having you, and we hope that the content is continually beneficial towards you. So, you were coming out of an episode that we just shot with Pastor Mojo, a great leader and a good friend of mine. And so coming out of that, we just want to take some time just to deep dive a bit into some of the topics and some of the discussions that were explored in that conversation. And so this is something you can expect moving forward after each episode with a special guest. We will then just kind of select just one or two topics that we feel like we can go a bit more deep into and just unpack a bit further, and we're going to speak on those just a bit more. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So I hope you're ready and excited, and then let's do this. And so today I want to chat to us regarding toxic masculinity. I just want to zone in a bit more and spend more time particularly looking at toxic masculinity, and just in the time we have, just some of the causes that in what I've just researched as well, and in my observations as well in society, and even in my life, particularly and personally, that I have observed, as well as how do we then go about addressing this? Because at the end of the day, we want something actionable. We want to come out of this with something that we can say, okay, here's some tools, here's something we can do to actually become better, to actually improve, to actually address some of these issues that we've identified. That is the whole purpose behind this show. So going straight into it, toxic masculinity, we tried defining this in the episode of Pastor Mojo. We tried just unpacking and seeing what it actually seems like. And I guess the best way I can kind of maybe unpack it or just frame it is by presenting traditional standards that are viewed as masculine in today's society, right? So I'm just going to list a few. Some of them is don't cry. In my native language, Zulu, we usually say indoda ayikhali. I heard that from the moment I was a toddler. Like I will dash my foot against a rock or something and hurt myself, and quickly someone would be like, hey, indoda ayikhali, or umfana akakhali, meaning a boy doesn't cry or a man doesn't cry. So that's something, you're probably familiar with, that you grew up hearing that a lot. Something else is show no fear. This is something that is attributed a lot to the male species. Physical strength is another. Professional success, being a breadwinner, dominance in a relationship, assertiveness, appearance, independence and self-reliance. These are just some, it's not an exhaustive list. These are just some of the traits that are usually attributed to what society would call a masculine individual, right? Which then begs the question, does this mean that the opposite of this means you're then not masculine, right? This is the kind of question that we're finding ourselves asking ourselves in these times. So I just want to chat to us about the causes. What I've observed is some of the causes that lead to these things. I'm sure we can agree, and even coming out of the episode with Pastor Mojo, we can agree that these traits, they lead to some kind of, well, as you see in the name, toxic behaviors that are not necessarily welcome, behaviors that have put a stain on the average man, right? And so where's it coming from? It stems from somewhere. Like I said earlier, I grew up being told a boy doesn't cry. Why that was the case, I don't know till this day. However, I know that that shouldn't be the case. Like, I sometimes feel a bit better after a good cry, and so it is not true for everyone. It's not true for everyone. And so to place that as a blanket term, to place that as a standard for every single person who is a male by birth, that is wrong, right? So some of the causes, I just want to just unpack three things that I'm seeing as causes that are actually contributing to these kind of standards, and men actually having to live up to some of these standards that society, tradition, whatever it may have been, kind of established, over the years. The first one I'm going to unpack with us is family dynamics. Family dynamics, when I look at it, it's one of the most critical elements in basically every human being. So whether it's a girl, whether it's a boy, right now in the context of what we're talking about, we're speaking directly into men. It is very critical. The family units, the family dynamic, it is very critical to the development and the upbringing of a male child, right? So when it comes to family dynamics, you find, for example, if there is which is the kind of normal picture that we've seen in society, where the father is missing in the picture in the average home, and that is currently the landscape of South Africa. The average household does not have a father in the household. Taking it further, maybe the father is in the household, but the father is not present in the household, right? So you find that this has a very, very lasting effect in the upbringing and the shaping of a male child, right? In other cases as well, maybe you find that both parents are not there. There are many cases where there are kids who are growing up being raised by their grandparents. For whatever reason, the parents are not in the picture, whether it's abandonment, whether it is parents passing away, unfortunately, at a very young age of the child's growth. This is something else that is actually contributing to us seeing this kind of dynamic in the household. And unfortunately, this has affected men. Over the years, over the generations, it has affected men, right? Just to kind of give a bit of a story that I've seen in my family and in my lineage, just looking at from my dad's perspective, right? In my dad's perspective, in my family, my dad, his brothers, my grandfather, these are tough men. These are tough men. These are men that actually uphold the stereotype of a Zulu man as a man who's aggressive and who's tough. They are literally that stereotype, right? They are tough men. But then when I look closer into that, I started finding small little traits, small little things that actually played a huge role in how my father turned out, in how his brothers turned out, in how, if I was not aware, I was not conscious and intentional, I would have also turned out that way, right? And it's small things in terms of behaviors, in terms of language, in terms of values that you instill in someone growing up. Whether it's intentional or unintentional, these play a large role. And so looking at family dynamics, I can certainly see, particularly when I look at my own life, I grew up with my mom in the house and my grandmother in the house. It was a female-dominated household. I had an uncle, not the best example, and he was in and out of the house. Like he wasn't as present. He treated the house as a place to sleep, and that was it, right? And so in that environment, I had female cousins as well. So most of the time, I was the only man in that household, right? So then, what is then something that is shaping the majority of my makeup as Kumtozis? What is that? It is my mother, it is my grandmother. What are the values that they're speaking into? They are speaking values that are relevant in their perspective, things maybe that are their experiences. And it's not to put any kind of shame or to discredit the works of single mothers out there, of those strong women who are raising families, those grandmothers or grandparents who are raising their children's children because their children are not present in the picture for whatever reason. It is not to discredit their efforts, but this is to say that in as much as they can put in their efforts, there's a reason why it takes a mother and a father to raise a child. There are certain principles, there are certain strengths that each individual brings in that space. And now I'm speaking this having to be in a position where now I have a son, right? And I started noticing the differences and the different strengths that I bring and that my wife brings in order to raise our son. My wife is more on the nurturing side. My wife is the one who is very much more emotional. Like she's more cuddly. She's ready. The moment my son cries, she is ready to chow and pick him up, right? Whereas me, on the other hand, some people might look and think this guy is insensitive. It's not the case. I love my son dearly. However, I understand discipline. There's a certain way that I understand and view discipline that my wife doesn't necessarily grasp at that level. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It is basically highlighting the different strengths that a male and a female bring and why the mother and the father is fundamental and important to a household being successful, to the children growing up well. And so you're seeing this. This is currently the norm within the South African homes. An average South African home doesn't have the dad present. It's only the mom. If not, worse than that, there's no parent at all, right? And so you're literally in for yourself. And so whatever the dynamics are in your family, whatever it is that it's looking like in your family, that is feeding into how you are actually going to take on life. If your father's not in the house, for whatever the reason is, it is inevitable. You're going to look outside. You're going to look at other male figures, whether this is on social media, whether it is some cousins or uncles, other relatives, whether it is celebrities that you know, people in your community. You're going to look outward because you want to imitate. You want to see a picture and then you want to say, okay, I want to become like this, whether it is by the way people dress, whether it is by the level of their success, the work they do, how they speak and carry themselves. You are going to imitate that kind of behavior. And so this is where you see the fundamental issue. When the father is not present at home, you have this gap. And then this gap is filled by other aspects. Some could be good, some not so good. So the family dynamic is quite a pivotal one when it comes to us looking at toxic masculinity and seeing some of these traits that now are plaguing our nation, are plaguing the men in our communities. And there's this outcry, and there's this outcry of just issues, and we're trying to figure out how did we get here and how do we resolve this. The second one I want to speak on is self-affirmed identity. This comes straight out of the family dynamics I was talking about. Because here's the important thing with a father's role and why a father is important in the household. A father's role is to affirm the son's identity, right? So I'm a believer, and the Bible is something that is very pivotal and very central to how I govern my life. And there was one thing that I look at that is such a powerful image, right? The Bible, there's this story about Jesus. He gets baptized, right? After his baptism, there is this miraculous moment that occurs. It describes that the skies open up and the Holy Spirit descends on Jesus in the form of a dove. And there's a voice that is heard coming from the heavens, right? This is what the writer of the gospel is describing. And what is said is very important. What is said is, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Now, there are three things that are very important that happen in this moment, right? The three things is, God the Father here is firstly affirming the identity of Jesus. He is his Son. Secondly, he is affirming love for him, the affection. And thirdly, he is then giving him his pleasure, saying, "I'm well pleased with him." The third one is very important. He says, "I'm well pleased in him." And if you are familiar with the writings in the Bible, the Gospels in particular, and Jesus' ministry and life, you would understand that Jesus at this point hadn't done a single miracle that we all read of and know of. The turning water into wine, the healing of the sick and raising of the dead. He hasn't done anything yet. In other words, his ministry hasn't begun. His work hasn't begun. His outworking of his purpose hasn't yet begun. And yet, here's his Father saying, "I'm proud of you." Now, what is the issue here? Some of us are growing up seeking the validation, the love of our father in particular. Yes, it can be our mothers, but again, just trying to zone in on the importance of a father in the son's life. Some of us grow up seeking and trying to attain the love and the acceptance and the validation of our father. I know I grew up doing that. I know I grew up doing that. It drove me to depression, right? Why is this? And then I look at this image and I see where a father, here is God the Father affirming and giving his love and affirming the identity of his son before anything is done. He hasn't done anything to deserve the "I love you and I'm proud of you, my son" from his dad. But here it is being seen. And surely there should be an example that we should take on. There should be an example we should also lead by as men. And so this is something else to start seeing. So if at home, the father's not present, your father's not in the home, well, like I said earlier, he's in the home, but he's not present, or he's not a great figure. Maybe this is something that is missing. And if it is missing, whether you're aware or not, you are looking for it. You're looking for it in relationships. You're looking for it in your job. You're looking for it from your father, and maybe you're not receiving it. And so this as well, if you're not receiving it, if it hasn't been solidified from a young age, then you're going to affirm it yourself. You're going to find ways to affirm your identity, whether it is in success in your career, whether it is, how well you do in your relationship, you're getting married. Milestones end up becoming markers of your identity instead of you, through your identity, being able to then succeed in life and hit the different milestones in life. And so here's another difficult thing that you find. Your father hasn't said, I'm proud of you. Your father hasn't spoken words of affirmation to say, my son, you're strong. My son, you're brave. And so you find bravery in being assertive in a romantic relationship. So do you see where then these things come from? They come from these areas where it's not found where it's supposed to be found, where it should be coming from in a healthy space. And so you then, in your own means, you find ways to kind of gather this, right? And social media has an assisted with this. It has an assisted in the sense that you may not portray it in certain ways in movies. There's a reason why you find we are drawn to a villain of a story. We're drawn to the bad boy in the story because there's something, even though we can agree on a moral level that that's not okay or that behavior is not okay. However, there is something, there's that confidence, there's that bravado that then we kind of yearn for, that we look at and we say, that is actually good, right? We would say it is not good to kill. However, to see a tough man who's able to stand up for his family, your John Brook and your these awesome action heroes who are able to, just stand up for the family, stand up for evil and justice. We admire that, right? Because they're standing for something that is wrong. They're seeing immorality and they're standing for that and they're saying, hey, I can do something about this. It is a good moral value. But then, from which place is it coming from? So then this is something as well that is also now, it contributes to these toxic masculine traits that you find so rampant. The third one I'm going to speak on is societal exposures. Like I said, I spoke about it earlier. If your father or parents is not present in the home and you don't have the right model at home, you're going to look externally, right? And might I say even further, even when you do have a good model at home, there are the external influences. So it also then rests on the work that is done in those early years, that early development, that then can be sort of a guide to that young man growing up, that when they go out and there are these influences, there are these figures out there, whether it's in music videos, whether it's in movies and the phones they watch, whether it's sports personalities within different fields, they are going to find different influences out there. I am in my mid-20s and I am still seeing some influences out there, and I need to be very conscious and very intentional to say, okay, am I going to take something from it? And if I am, what am I taking? What is the reason for me taking this? Right? I still need to ask these questions. However, we are not at that level. We are not all at that same level to be able to reason at that level, to be able to have that level of intentionality in terms of when you see something and you admire, but being able to scrutinize and be careful and say, okay, what am I going to take and what am I not going to take? And young people are very impressionable. So you see something, it looks good, and maybe it's great. Some people seem to admire it. People seem to follow this person as a major following on Instagram, and so they think, okay, this is great, right? So societal exposures become such a great part in that. However, I put these 3 points in this order for a purpose. You'll see that societal exposures wouldn't be such a need. You affirming your own identity yourself wouldn't be such a need if these things are affirmed at a young age by your parents, right? And I say by your parents, yes, I'm focusing on men. However, like I said, both parents bring strength into this. The mother can come and bring that nurturing so that you grow up understanding that it is okay to show emotion. It is okay to cry. It is okay to embrace, right? And then your father brings in the discipline to make you aware that it is okay to work hard, to be diligent in something. It is okay to want to have some bravery. It is okay to want to protect. It is okay to want to be strong, right? So you see that then a balance can be established when both parents are present, when both parents are intentional in terms of sowing into the life of the young one as they grow up. This becomes affirmed. And when this is affirmed, the likelihood is less that when you go out there, you're going to try to affirm your identity because it's already been affirmed at home. The likelihood is less that when you go out there, you're going to be swayed left, right, and center by every single influencer, every single celebrity, every single figure that is around you, your boss, your manager, your cool friend, that is your best friend. It's going to be less likely that you are swayed by these different elements. Why? Because your identity is affirmed at home, because you are loved at home, because you have been affirmed that there is delight in you already before you've gone out and conquered the world, right? So, as we wrap up, how do we address this, right? We want to be able to figure out how can we actually get better at this, right? And before I jump into that, just to kind of frame that last section, these are the traits and the values that are desired. And if we actually want to define, right? I had a look and trying to define masculinity, or what is the good kind of masculinity. There isn't necessarily, I didn't come across a definition that I was really happy with, but these are the values that I can say, at least if you find yourself maybe working towards this and you're developing this, then you can say, okay, maybe I am then living up to the ideal kind of a man, right? So just to list them a few. The man of a healthy masculine man is one who embraces responsibility. We know this, it is not a secret. Men have a responsibility. The world is looking at men. There is an expectation on men, whether it is at home, whether it's with your spouse, at work, you lead a business, whatever space it is, your siblings, you're the firstborn, there's an expectation on you as the male. So you need to embrace this responsibility you have as a man. And so a man embraces responsibility. A man loves. And this already says a lot about a man that doesn't cry, or a man that doesn't show vulnerability. A man loves, and love is vulnerable, love is a risk. A man honors. A man honors. A man protects. There's a reason why us men are more strong than the female counterpart. It's not so that we can assert our dominance over them and overpower them. It's so that we can be protectors of our households, protectors of our societies, protectors of our children and spouses. A man protects, a man provides for his family. It's part of the responsibility you embrace. You provide for responsibility. And a lot can be said around that, but I'm just going to park it there, that you provide for your family. You live with integrity. That word integrity means to be whole, to be one. Means you're not double-minded, you're not divided, you're not swayed easily. You're a man of integrity. And you're motivated by convictions. You're not taken by comforts and convenience, but it's conviction. A man has a conviction. A man who has a vision is a man who has a tunnel vision. Is a man who is narrow, and he knows what is for him and what is not for him. And that person is focused. When that person has a conviction and a vision, that person is focused. So these are some of the things you can look at and say, okay, this is what you'd like to see in a man. Maybe you're a female, you're watching this episode and you're saying, yes, that is the kind of man I want to submit to. Maybe you're there looking at like, yes, your mother, and you're saying, yes, that's the kind of man our son's proud to be. These are the values that are universally accepted. All right, so how do you address then the issues we're saying? How do we address the issues that we find around toxic masculinity? 4 things, and then you can wrap it up. The first thing is that I want to really implore you, I want to really encourage you, explore mental health services. This is another thing, and it's an episode on its own. However, mental health, it is not just females. In fact, we're in desperate need of mental health as men. Men are broken. Men are broken. Men are hurt. Men are confused. Some are lost. Explore these services. These are professionals who have trained in these areas. It is not taboo. Let us please end that. It is not taboo to be a man who goes to therapy every month or every 2 weeks. It is not taboo. You are not any less of a man. You are not weak for doing it. You are taking care of yourself. You're taking time to understand your emotions, taking time to understand your brains, understand why do you behave in the way that you behave, where is it stemming from. Take that journey. Be bold enough to say, I'm going to embark on this journey just to understand myself a bit more. Because here's what happens. If we are not being very careful and mindful of our behaviors, We take them on as identity when it's not going to be an identity. For years, I told myself I'm an angry person, and it didn't help that I'm Zulu. But I needed to understand that, hey, this shouldn't be the case. For years, I told myself that I am scared. I'm not a brave person. It stemmed suddenly. And I was able to discover that and understand that by journeying through therapy, sitting with a therapist. That's where I could understand certain things. Oh, this is where this is stemming from. Oh, this is why I find myself being so terrified of certain things. Oh, this is why I have trust issues. There's a root cause. And you can only discover this if you take the time to actually journey and discover some of these things. So please, I implore you, explore mental health services. They will be to our benefit. Secondly, be part of a healthy community. Be part of a healthy community. I say healthy intentionally. There are communities out there. There are many different communities. Not all of them are good for us. Not all of them are healthy for us. Some of those communities could find us in places that we are not desirable, places that we don't want to be in, right? So be in a healthy community. This could be a church community. This could be a brotherhood, brothers that you grew up with, brothers that you know are like-minded to you uphold similar values as well. Find yourself in communities. Surround yourself with older men. Surround yourself with older men. People who are going to be mentors. People who are going to be able to correct you because they've traveled that path and they can say, hey, I know this road and I know where it leads. Be mindful of this. There's a pothole at that junction. Be mindful of this. We need that. Men, we don't find ourselves in community. This is something that females are doing really well. There are sisterhoods all around. They have communities, right? It's another question whether it's a healthy community or not, but at least they understand that there is health to be found with other people. Men, we are not called to do this alone. We are not called to be the alpha male. We are not called to be a self-made man. In fact, there's no such thing as a self-made man. There's someone behind every single person's success. So find yourself in a healthy community. Plug yourself in. Get those brothers. Whether it's a church community, get those colleagues that you know they inspire you, or you guys have similar values, you're building towards similar things, and you can encourage each other on the journey. You can advise each other. You can support one another. You can walk the journey together. It's less lonely. It's less daunting when you do it with someone else, right? Thirdly, baby steps. Simple as that, baby steps. I know as men, we are problem solvers. We are problem solvers. We get a problem, and we just want to tackle it. We get a problem, we're already thinking solution. And we can literally be in a bubble. We can isolate and just step back from engaging with society because we're trying to solve a problem. And we can still do that. We're good at that, problem solvers, right? But sometimes some things just need to be taken just a little bit. Just a bite at a time. Little chunk bites. You take it baby steps at a time. Whether it's that you are exploring your anger issues. That is something I said earlier. That's something I struggle. Anger issues. And I'm not completely over it. I'm still journeying through some of these anger issues. If you're with me in a car and I'm driving, I'm much better now, but I'm driving on the road. Taxi's doing something, or there's something funky happening on the road. I'm ready to cuss. I'm ready to just yell. I'm hooting. I start driving also kind of recklessly. It sometimes happens, right? I'm journeying through this. And so I had to understand it's not going to be an overnight thing. And so I had to giving myself to therapy, giving myself to being quiet, studying my mind, trying to understand where it's coming from and addressing those things bit by bit. Because here's the thing, something that has been developed over 18, 21 years, it's not going to go away in 21 days. It is going to take time. And so some of us, we're in our 30s, we're in our 40s, and we've been carrying certain things. It's not going to go away simply as that. So give yourself grace. Be patient with yourself. Take it baby steps at a time. And lastly, challenge the social norm. Gents, we so often, something I've noticed is that we shrink back. It's like when it comes to society, when it comes to expectations, when it comes to what is generally accepted, we kind of just shrink back and follow suit. And here's the thing. Funny enough, as men, that is not our calling. Every man, I'm speaking to every single man, That is not your calling. I look at some of the greatest men who have lived, men in our time, you Dr. Martin Luther King. I'm looking at men in the Bible. All of these guys, they stand out because they had a vision that inspired them. They had purpose, they had identity. And so when they had that, they were so narrow. They knew their lane. They knew what was for them and what was not for them. And so that's what made them to be so successful in what they did. And so they were not people who were going to easily just conform to what society dictates, to the pressures of society. I'm talking about men who were ready to even die for what they believed in. And that is something that I believe all men are called to. And so we need to challenge the social norm. And I found this with myself, where, for example, there's normal example, and probably most of us as men can relate to this. Standing with your brothers, maybe standing at the corner of the streets, La Pecasi, or wherever it is, you may find yourself and you're just hanging with the bros, and then female or woman just passes by, and you look at them and there will be some kind of reaction, maybe a or, that whistle, And I found myself, I've been guilty of this, where I join in on a conversation because I don't want to be that outlier. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy. You would see, get used to team man. Now I'm being standard. Now I'm being the buzzkill. So I join in on that, but I know very well I don't subscribe to that. And so here's a piece of advice. Challenge that. Speak up and be like, no, hey, I don't think that's actually appropriate. That's someone's sister, that's someone's daughter, right? So challenge the status quo. Challenge that norm, the social norm that you're seeing in society. That they say, men don't cry. Hey, I enjoy a good cry, and I feel better after crying. One last example I'll leave you with is, I recently got married. When I recently got married, my wife and I, we made a decision that, hey, we are going to reserve the time from 7 p.m. to ourselves, right? Unless the extenuating circumstances, that's fine. But as much as possible, from 7 p.m., that is time for myself and my wife. And so when we're at home, our phones, we put them aside. We're not on our phones. We're either having dinner together, watching something, having a conversation, whatever it is our time, right? Now, I work. And at work, maybe sometimes there's a work function, a social function, or I'm at a party that I'm invited to, right? And when I'm at these parties, people who know me, I'd often look at my watch, particularly after 6, right? And I know if I'm at a work function, I'm 15 minutes away from home, at around quarter to I should be making my way home, right? And people at first would, I'd be at a work function and I'm about to leave, and people are like, I'm too, why? I just opened, hey, we're going to do this, we're about to do this, come on, just stay longer. And I'm like, I understand, guys, it was a lot of fun, but I need to get home to my wife now, right? And at first I'd get certain looks, I'd get certain comments. However, here's what happened. After some time, I was intentional, I'm going to stick to this. And mind you, I would have loved to stay longer. It wasn't that I was bored. It was fun. I was having fun. But I made a commitment. This is what my wife and I are agreeing to and committing to. And so I stood by that. As difficult as it was, as much as I still wanted to stay a bit longer, I committed to that. And after some time, not long, people started respecting that. People understood that to the point where they would then tell me, hey, isn't it time for you to go home? Your wife is waiting for you. Hey, they would actually tell me, go home. Why? Because now they understand, they respect that value, right? Because here's the thing, it might not be a norm in society, but people admire it because it is a good virtue. And so it would be uncomfortable at first, but hey, can I challenge you? Take that step, be bold. Stand for what you believe in. Stand for what you know to be right, to be honorable, to be true. Stand for that. It might be lonely, it might be uncomfortable, you might get criticized, but it won't be long. Someone is going to take notes. Someone might join you. Someone is going to respect you, and you would all the better for it. All right. And so I hope you're encouraged by that. And until next time, please, men, be intentional. The man you're becoming is better than the man you are today. We hope you enjoyed that episode and that you found it valuable and worth your time. Hey, and if you did so enjoy it, why don't you hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. And also, if you haven't shared it, share it to someone who you know will find this information very valuable. Hey, we have a goal and we'd love to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. And so we'd really appreciate it if you can assist with sharing the word and spreading the word out there. And we hope you'll be part of this journey. Also, drop a comment below. We read every single comment that is posted, and we would really love to hear your feedback and your thoughts. Your feedback is also very valuable and appreciated and helps our team so that we can bring you even better content. And with that said, please rate our show wherever you are consuming us on whichever different platform. Thanks for being part of this journey. We appreciate you.